The pick is in.
With the 27th pick, the Baltimore Ravens select Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. So let's bring in Locked on Ravens host Kevin Oestreicher to talk about Malachi. Listen, Kevin, I covered Malachi Starks for his entire time, his 3 years at UGA. I think this is a really great pick for the Ravens at 27. I've even heard people call him a home run for this Ravens organization. But what do you think about this pick for Baltimore?
I think it is. I think home run is a great word to describe it. The Ravens had the board fall to them pretty perfectly, and Eric DeCosta, the Ravens GM, essentially said that, if Malachi was gone, the Ravens had another guy that they would have loved to take. But Malachi, it was reported earlier a couple of days ago that he was their dream selection, and certainly Baltimore gets their guy here. And for Malachi, he frees up a lot on this Ravens defense, the big one being Kyle Hamilton, which is a big storyline, but just the player that he is, having the range, the ball tracking ability, his ability to play all over the field and be a versatile piece. The Ravens love the positionless defense. They love moving everybody around, confusing offenses, giving offenses different looks, and Malachi fits into that. The safety position, although Kyle Hamilton is a big member of that group, Marcus Williams was a disaster last season. Eddie Jackson was a disaster last season. They had to move guys around, not because they wanted to, but because it was their only hope to help improve that defense. Now with Malachi in, you have so many other options, and I think it helps Baltimore, especially on the defensive side of the ball, as they help to continue their strong second half of the year they had last year.
Yeah, I feel like there is Zach Orr, defensive coordinator, just kind of salivating about the upside of what Starks brings to the table. But Kyle Hamilton has to be feeling that way as well. So when you think about just what you mentioned, the upside for Starks as far as linking up with Kyle Hamilton, my goodness, Kevin, the fits that those folks are going to bring to the secondary, particularly to my Steelers, I think is going to be diabolical.
And I love it. And I completely agree with you, where they moved Kyle Hamilton to be a deep safety last season, as I mentioned, out of necessity because they really had no other options. Hamilton played great on the back end last season, but he is at his best when you can move him around the field, put him up in the box, blitz him off of the edge, and not limit him to just being in the deep part of the field. Now, Malachi Starks brings you that versatility, and it's almost kind of like a perfect combination of Hamilton can be that physical up at the line safety. You can put him in the slot as you can with Malachi Starks, and that's just what they love, where Marlon Humphrey you can put in the nickel, or Darius Washington you can put in the nickel as well. And with Kyle Hamilton, there were questions about, did the Ravens want to keep him in the deep part of the field? Now, there are other possibilities. Maybe the Ravens draft a deep safety later and they get a big safety. Like, there are plenty of other ways that this could go. But for Malachi Starks, a guy that, again, people had going maybe to Minnesota, maybe as a trade-up candidate for a lot of teams, Baltimore let the board fall to them, as they always do. They did it with Kyle Hamilton back in 2022, and he fell into the laps. Again, Malachi Starks falls into Baltimore's laps, and they didn't even have to lift a finger. They got one of the best players in this draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, they just have a sneaky good way of getting these players just kind of staying the course and getting the player that they want. And I'm sure, just like we talked about Zach Orr and the excitement that he has, obviously, I'm sure Don DeLessio is excited about this pick as well. But what is maybe that one thing that you want to see the DB coach, you want to see the DC really help Starks to work on so that he can be ready for this Ravens defense, this Ravens secondary day one?
Yeah, I just think catching up for Malachi Starks is definitely going to be his role, because I feel like sometimes with these teams, you can put a guy in a specific role. It doesn't work. You want to move them all around. And sometimes that can be too much for a young player at the NFL level. Like, Malachi Starks has a proven track record of doing that in college, and that cannot be questioned. But obviously the NFL is a different beast. So I just say, leading up to training camp, rookie mini camp, preseason, just making him feel comfortable. He is really an all-around player. I know that there are some concerns about the size for Malachi Starks, but I don't think that's going to be, it's not like he's a 5'8" safety. He still has a physical build to him. He's just not Nicky Minwori, who obviously that is like the pinnacle of safety builds. He's like a Kyle Hamilton. So the Ravens didn't need two Kyle Hamiltons. That they are fine with just one. I think Malachi Starks complements what Baltimore needed at the position. And again, just figuring out where he fits best. That doesn't mean don't move him around at all. That certainly is going to be a big part of what Malachi does in Baltimore. But I just think don't throw too much at him at first, even though I'm sure he can handle it. Malachi is a very smart football player, a very smart person. But I do think that for Baltimore, getting him acclimated at one spot, then moving him to another, then another, instead of having him go here, then back there, lay out a plan, make the plan, and execute it. I think that's the best course of action for Malachi Starks.
Yeah, you get to see him play at that highest level. Appreciate the time, Kevin, and for continuing coverage of the Ravens. Subscribe to Locked On Ravens wherever you get your podcasts. And for more on Malachi Starks, let's hear from Locked On Bulldogs host Clint Shamblin, who spent a lot of time covering Malachi up close.
Clint Shamblin, Locked On Bulldogs here, talking about Malachi Starks. And this is why Malachi Starks is going to be one of your favorite players for your team. Coming into this draft, he is one of the most athletic, heady, smart, high IQ in terms of football guy that there is. Kirby Smart loves getting safeties, Tyke Smith, Christopher Smith, Richard LeCount, who are athletic, ball hawking, tackling machines. And that's exactly what Malachi Starks. Play one that he was at Georgia. Beautiful turnaround ball hawking interception against Oregon, and he did not let up ever since that first play. Memorable as it may be, he's actually better at being a leader on the field, being a guy who's not out of position. He can run with any tight end, any wide receiver going up the seam. He could play over the top coverage, and coming downhill, he is a menace in the tackling game against the run. Malachi Starks should be first round. He's going to be talented, 10 plus years in the league doing all of this and more. Malachi Starks, Georgia Bulldogs.